Good morning, everybody. We are in Numbers chapter 12 this morning, getting back to our study after what seems like a really long break, at least for me. We had a Nicaragua trip since we were last together in Numbers chapter 12, and then we did a Nicaragua update, or recap, I should say, after that. And so now we're back in Numbers chapter 12. And we are looking at a chapter that deals with defending yourself, self-defense. When someone attacks your character, sometimes we call it character assassination. They go after your character in order to destroy it. How should we handle that? That is tough for you and I as believers in a fallen world, in a world where everything revolves around self-preservation and self-promotion. We have entire websites dedicated to ourselves, or social media pages dedicated to ourselves and the self-promotion of the self, obviously. And so when someone attacks us, it's normal, it's expected that we should go on the defense, that we should go on the attack, not only defending ourselves, but attacking the other individual's character. And so we learn that in the kingdom of God, and I think we all know this, that in the kingdom of God there is something far, far different that we are supposed to do. We don't like to hear these kinds of things because it feels better to go on the attack and attack that person that's attacking us. However, we must always ask ourselves, what is pleasing to the Lord? What pleases God? That's what I want to do. I may not feel like doing that, but that's what should be done. In Numbers chapter 12, we have two main divisions. The first being, obviously, division, the word division. And then the second one is defending. And so we will see here what this is all about. In verse 1, beginning in verse 1, what we start with is some complaining. Some complaining. Let's find out what the complaining is all about. It says, Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. How dare him? Now, real quickly, so that we catch you up and you know where we're at, the children of Israel were saved from slavery in Egypt, out of Egypt. Way back, we learned about that in how they got there to Egypt in Genesis, and they were saved in Exodus, and God used Moses. God used Moses. Who used Moses? God used Moses to lead the people out of Egypt. So it was God that was doing the rescuing, but he was using Moses as his human instrument. And we're going to find out today in this chapter that they had a very intimate relationship. It was a good relationship, a relationship unlike any other. But Moses has been leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, and they're getting into the second year. He's dealt with complaining and problems already. You know how that is. You get a large group of people together. Some of you, maybe even in your own family, you're on a road trip, and it doesn't take very long, right? You're in the car or in the vehicle or in the van, and you're trucking on down the highway and headed toward wherever you're going. And, Mom, he's touching my leg. Mom, she, touched my flip-flop. They won't let me watch the screen. They won't share the iPad, whatever. Complaining starts very quickly. Now, there's potentially out here with Moses millions of people. So can you imagine? Imagine your family multiplied by millions. Imagine your little brother or your little sister, or maybe an older brother or older sister. You know how they are, right? And imagine that there are millions of these people out there wandering in the wilderness. They have no home yet. They're tent camping, and they're on their way to the promised land. But obviously we know that problems will arise, complaining will arise, and sometimes it's between the campers themselves. But this time, the shots are aimed at Moses the leader. And it is surprising who does it. It is actually his own family. Look at this. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses. Now, you need to understand this, that in the original language, it actually says that she spoke against Moses. The chapter starts that way. Later, toward the end of the chapter, we will see God's judgment on Miriam. That Miriam is struck with leprosy for 7 days. And some of us might go, well, wait a minute. Why Miriam and why not Aaron? Aaron was there. Well, because of the original language, it's an indication for us that Miriam was actually the one leading the charge. This is not real surprising. She's not been in a lot of trouble. But you may remember back to the crossing of the Red Sea and when the Egyptian army was defeated. And Moses got out there and started singing a song, man, and everybody joined in, and they were saying, you know, the Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name, and he just went through this beautiful song. And then once he was done, Miriam broke out her tambourine and gathered up all the ladies and like, all right, let's go. And this gospel choir started, and you know, she took the charge, like, let's get out there and let's sing another part of the song. And so you see that little bit of maybe a tendency to lead, or you know, maybe to step in there a little bit. But here, obviously, it's in full swing. She's not been problematic yet, but now she becomes problematic, and we see her taking the lead. And here's Aaron. Some of you may remember the account of Moses being up on Mount Sinai. And what did the people do down below? Does anybody remember what they did while he was up there on the mountain? Anybody? Anybody? Yes? They made an idol. And who made it for them? Aaron. It was Aaron. Aaron. This guy's supposed to be a leader. He's supposed to be this priest. Like what's the deal, man? You're supposed to be this godly leader. And they said, listen, Moses is gone. He's been up there too long. And we don't know if he's coming back. And we need you to make us an idol that we can worship and that will lead us back to Egypt. And Aaron just went along with it. Okay, give me your earrings and your jewelry and let's make an idol. And he made a golden calf for them to worship. And here's Aaron again. Supposed to be a priest. And here's Aaron following Miriam's lead. It's like, Aaron, come on. Grow a spine, man. And take charge and correct somebody. Stop these things. But here in verse 1, Miriam and Aaron together, and it's Miriam taking the lead, but Aaron certainly there, spoke against Moses. Now, they spoke against him because of the Ethiopian woman he had married. So their point of contention, their complaining, begins with Moses' choice of a wife. Now, there are lots of different thoughts and ideas, and I want to mention a few of these before we get off of this topic of Moses' wife. A lot of people say that Moses' Ethiopian wife, his new wife, was because that Zipporah left him and he was divorced and now he's getting remarried. Here are a few of the possibilities. Some think perhaps Zipporah by this time had died. And this was a second wife that Moses took after she died, after her death. Remember that Moses he lived a remarkably long life. He's more than 81 at this time. So it's possible that he outlived Zipporah and now he's being remarried. Others think that Moses took a second wife in addition to Zipporah. Possible, I suppose. There's another possibility. Some people suggest that Jethro, does anybody remember who Jethro is? His father, that's close. Father-in-law, his father-in-law. Some people think that Jethro, his father-in-law, was actually from Ethiopia. And that he had moved to Midian and brought his daughter Zipporah with him. And that Moses had married Zipporah. And she was actually an Ethiopian and not from Midian. So that's another possibility. It's also possible, someone said, that Ethiopian was being used as a derogatory term because Zipporah or this woman had a dark skin. So it may be that they're complaining about her complexion or what she looks like. So those are some possibilities. We're not told here exactly who this woman is, only that he had married this Ethiopian. But that's where the complaining starts. Now we find out that that is not the only problem, or maybe not the main problem, or maybe that's not really the problem at all, or maybe it's just one of many that they have against Moses. But the complaining turns to questioning. And so they said, here's what they say: has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? So now they are questioning. First they questioned Moses' choice of a wife. However, now they are questioning God's choosing of Moses. You see that? At first they're questioning Moses' choice of a wife. Now they're questioning God's choice of Moses. And they ask this question, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? In other words, is this the only guy that God can use? Is this the only one that God has chosen? I mean, look at this guy. He married this dark woman, or he married this Ethiopian, or look, it's his second wife, or whatever complaint they had against him. Look at this guy. Can he really be our leader? I mean, he went up to Mount Sinai and was up there for a month and, just left us. And here we are wandering around, and sometimes we're starving to death. You know how dramatic people can be, right? Hey, are you hungry? Oh my gosh, I'm starving. You don't know what starving is. We don't know what starving is. We don't really know what hunger is. We know hunger, but we don't really understand those things in their fullness. But they bring these attacks against Moses, his choosing of his wife, and now God's choosing of Moses. They ask another question: has he not spoken through us also? Has he not spoken through us also? In other words, is this leader Moses, is he the only one that God can use? Hasn't he spoken through us also? Maybe thinking back to the last chapter that we were in, when God said, he told Moses, listen, gather up the elders, and I'm going to take the spirit that I've given you, and I'm going to put it on all of these elders also, and they're going to prophesy. And remember some of that? They prophesied. Maybe she's thinking, well, hasn't he spoken through more than just Moses? I mean, Moses is not the only leader. And so they're questioning. They're not necessarily questioning Moses here, although they think, in their minds, they think that they're questioning just Moses. But notice at the end of verse 2, what does it say there? And the Lord heard it. Oh, man. Right? It's an indicator that as they're speaking, God is listening. And it says in verse 3, now the man Moses was very humble, or meek, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. So we're given a description there of Moses, that this man was humble. So they're attacking Moses, and that's indicated for us there that Moses was not defending himself. He was a humble individual. And so he's not going on the attack. Spurgeon, how many of you have heard of Charles Spurgeon? Anybody in here heard of Charles Spurgeon? A pastor from another time. He said and this language is a little bit older, obviously, because he's an older guy, but every now and then we hear some simpleton. That's some simple person. Name for simple person. Every now and then we hear some simpleton or other talking against a one-man ministry. He says, when it has been a one-man ministry from the commencement of the world, there's always been one leader. That's God. To the present day, and whenever you try to have any other form of ministry, in other words, when you try to say, well, you know what, we're just going to have, let's have 5 people in charge, or let's have 2 people in charge. He says that whenever you have any other form of ministry and doing it thoroughly and heartily and independently and bravely in the sight of God, you very soon run upon quicksands. In other words, Spurgeon was saying that God set up this model of one leader. One leader. Now you can have assistant leaders. You can have people that assist the leader in many different ways. I have lots and lots and lots of assistants. There are so many people that assist me. Obviously, you know about the leaders that are in here that assist me, because I can't possibly get to everybody. And so they assist me by being available for you also. Many of you know about Haley. How many of you know Haley? Yes, everybody knows Haley, right? Because oftentimes when there's an event going on or something and you say, hey, can I give you this money? I go, no, don't hand it to me, because it'll end up being my lunch money during the week. I'll just be like, where? Oh, the Lord blessed me with $20. Where did that come from? I won't remember. No, give that to Haley. Give that to Haley. Give your paperwork to Haley. She helps with so much around here. But I've got people at home that assist me also. My wife and my kids assist me. Those of you that are part of the mission team, when we did the burrito sale and we're wrapping burritos, you'll remember that my wife and my daughter Blue they were out there wrapping up burritos, helping out. But my other daughter Chloe helps out making t-shirts. I could make t-shirts, but I don't have time for that. I need you to make t-shirts. So I have so many people helping me out. You come here, you see me in all my glory. But there are so many people assisting me. But that's the pattern. Look over at the door, everybody. It's Jada. Woo! I have so many people assisting me. And that's the model that God set up. Did you know that Jesus had assistants? And it wasn't just the disciples that we know of, the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles that we hear about. It wasn't just those disciples. Did you know that there were other people? Did you know that there was a group of women that followed Jesus around? Even Jesus, during his earthly ministry, needed assistance. Remember when he gave the fishes and the loaves, he blessed it, broke it, and he gave it out to the disciples, and they start going out and giving it out. Jesus couldn't go around and give bread and fish to every single person. There's too many people out there. So these people are hungry, man, get them some food. And so he calls on these assistants. But as far as leadership, God set up this pattern where there's one person in charge, one person leading the whole thing. And now Miriam and Aaron there, her tag-along, are, they're complaining. Well, is Moses the only one? What is this all about? And, what's going on here? And basically questioning him, but in the process, what they're doing is they're questioning God. Not a good thing to do, right? And we're told that God heard it. Now, at that point, what happens, and we move into our second and final main division. This begins at verse 4 and will take us all the way down to the end of the chapter, verse 16. But we're told here that there's this defending, and I love what happens in verse 4 is that we see God speaking for Moses. Remember, we were just told that Moses was the most humble person on the face of the earth at that time. Now we're told that God is speaking for Moses. Look at verse 4. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, suddenly. Sometimes, and it seems to be rare, at least in my case, in my life, sometimes God works suddenly. I have oftentimes found myself complaining, wrongly so, obviously. Man, God, come on, like I'm praying for this thing. Hurry up, I need it now. Thinking that God's taking too long, he's going to miss his opportunity. What a foolish thing, what a silly thing. To think that God's going to miss his opportunity. God's timing is perfect, right? We know that. But it gets hard to wait. And there are those times when God does something immediately or suddenly. And here is one of those cases. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Now this is, for me, this is so scary. I want you to think about this. Maybe you're in the room here, or you're at camp, or you're on a mission trip with us, or you're at a beach trip or something. And then you see from across the room or from across the way, you see Pastor Chris go, hey, can you come here real quick? Fear in the heart. Oh, what does he want? What is he going to ask? Right? Can you come here for a second? It's like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And some of you, many of you, and I've seen it over the years, come like, yeah? Hey, that's a cool shirt you got on. Where'd you get that? So, sweat beads like, the leader's calling me. Oh no, I'm gonna die. Telling your friend here, can you hold my phone and all that? Can you give these to my mom? After I die. But we that tends to do something in our heart, like, oh my gosh. And here, the Lord says to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Now, I'm not sure if Moses knew exactly what was going on with Miriam and Aaron yet. We're not really given that information. Like were they standing there in front of Moses and pointing over him? Look at this guy, him and his Ethiopian wife, and he thinks he's some kind of leader. Or were they doing it behind his back and he was off somewhere? We're not really sure. But here we're told that all of a sudden the Lord says to Moses and Aaron and Miriam, and he says this, he says, come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the three came out. Now, look at this. He says, come out. And where does he call them to? The tabernacle of meeting. Now, those of you that have been with us for a little while, you may remember, search hard, okay? Where is the tabernacle of meeting located? Does anybody remember?
At the middle of the camp.
Tegan, thank you so much for being here this morning, buddy. I appreciate you. Yes, at the center of the camp. So he calls Moses and Aaron and Miriam out to the center of the camp. Center of the camp means all eyes on Moses, Miriam, and Aaron. Come out, you three. Come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the three came out. Then the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud. You understand? Then the Lord descended in the pillar of cloud. Okay? I mean, I can only imagine what must have been going on in the heart and minds of Miriam and Aaron. They've just been questioning, Moses, and look at this guy's wife, and what does he think he is? And the Lord says, hey, Moses, Aaron, Miriam, get out here. Come to the center of camp. Like, ooh. I just feel like I would have immediately, like, Lord, please forgive me, please forgive me, please forgive me. I'm so sorry, I won't do it again. Calls him out. And then he begins to descend in the pillar of cloud. And he stood in the door of the tabernacle, family. Do you hear what's going on? Like, here's God. Whatever it was that was taking place, it was a big enough deal that God descends in this pillar of cloud. He's veiling himself in this pillar of cloud because he can't just come down in all of his glory. Everybody would just immediately die. He would destroy everybody with his glory. So he comes down in this pillar of cloud and stands in the door of the tabernacle. The pillar of cloud is there. And he called Aaron and Miriam. And they both went forward. Freak out. You've just been talking trash about somebody, and then somebody calls you out. Now, I am a dad. I've got 4 kids that aren't kids anymore. But I remember over the years, lots of times where this type of thing happened. I can remember, I was just remembering as I was going through the studying through this, I was remembering yesterday that there was a time many years ago when I've got 4 kids. One of my daughters and my son, I've got 3 girls, 1 boy. And I remember they had some friends over. And I was in my room. They were in the front room. And I've got a small house. I can hear everything. We can hear everything. And I heard them treating their other sister badly. You know how that goes, right? Sometimes, when people are with their friends, all of a sudden they're just so super cool and they start talking trash about somebody else. And, everybody's laughing or whatever. And I heard them saying something about their other sister, giving her a hard time. Well, in my house, I always taught my kids, listen, we don't bully people here, man. Everybody that lives in this house needs to feel comfortable and needs to feel safe. And we don't, we can tease. My family teases a lot. We joke around, we tease a lot. But we don't bully people, man. We don't treat people like that. And so I heard them doing that, and I went in there. Now, they're in there with their friends. They're all super cool, and then Dad walks in, in my bathrobe. No, I wasn't in my bathrobe, but, I come out of the room, and I was like, what did you say? I'm from San Bernardino. Like, what did you say? And they just like, fear. I said, what is the, and just right there in front of everybody. I said, what's your problem? Why were you doing that to your sister? I questioned them right there, right in front of their friends. Do you want to treat her like that in front of everybody? Then I'm going to call you on it right here. And they were, faces turned white, they just wanted to, just melt and go under the couches. And later, my son was like, man, but why in front of my friends? I said, why would you treat your sister like that in front of your friends? Why would you do that? But some of you, I'm not looking at anybody, well, probably not any of you, but some people have probably been guilty of doing that. And then here's God saying to Moses and Miriam, hey, here, I need to talk to both of you. And so we're told that both went forward in verse 5. Then in verse 6, God speaks. And he says, hear now my words. It's like, I can't hear anything else. All I can hear is you, God. Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. In other words, God is saying it's possible that I will speak to other people, that I will reveal myself. I'll make myself known to other people. That is a possibility. There are other people that hear from the Lord. It's not just the pastor's the only one that knows, how to explain the Bible. That's what and I'm not trying to go on the attack here, but that's what the Catholic Church has done for ages and ages and ages. I know, because I thought I was a Catholic many years ago growing up. But we were taught that, only the priest knows how to interpret the Bible. You don't know how to interpret the Bible, so don't read it. God says here, there may be other people that hear from me. He says that. If there's a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I decide that, he says. I speak to him in a dream, perhaps. Verse 7, not so with my servant Moses. In other words, there is a difference. Now notice what he's doing. He's saying there is a distinction. He does not disagree with Miriam when she said, well, doesn't God speak to all of us? He says, that's true. I can speak to other people. That is true. He says, however, it's different with my servant Moses. And notice he called him his servant. This is my servant. He's a servant. He says, not so with my servant Moses in verse 7. He is faithful in all my house. You understand? There are other people that are faithful. No doubt there were people in this camp that were faithful. We are going to hear, we've heard a little bit about Joshua, and we will hear more about Joshua as we continue on through our study of the Old Testament. We'll hear about Joshua, faithful man. As for me and my house, we will what? What did he say? Yes, that's correct. Faithful. But here he's making a distinction. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. And look at this in verse 8. Okay? There's always, there's question about this, and we've wondered about this over our study of Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus, now Numbers. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings, and he sees the form of the Lord. Now, we do need to understand that the word form is used to tell us that it was a visual representation, like a picture or an image of something heavenly. It wasn't that Moses saw God face to face. He didn't see God in all of his glory face to face, we're told here, but he did speak. And so he says there, he makes a distinction. I speak with them face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of the Lord. Like I can see a silhouette, or I can see this representation of God. So Moses had a relationship with God unlike any other. Unlike any other. Yes, God spoke to other people. Yes, God was prophesying through those elders in the previous chapter. Yes, that happened. God even used Jethro that we talked about earlier in the story to speak to Moses. God would go on to speak through a donkey, trying to get a hold of Balaam, trying to get Balaam's attention. God may speak to anyone and through anyone that he so chooses. But with Moses, he makes a distinction and he says, I speak to him plainly, not in dark sayings. God is saying we're like friends when we talk. I talk to him face to face, not in dark sayings, just plainly. I just talk to him. Moses talks to me. We have that kind of relationship. So God makes this distinction, and he's pointing out to Miriam and Aaron, because Miriam was saying, listen, is he really that special? And God says, yes, he is. And it wasn't just because Moses was Moses and he was the most faithful man, or he was the most humble man in the world. It wasn't that God had this special relationship with him because of that. He had a special relationship with Moses because he chose to have a special relationship with Moses. Do you remember? Do not forget that Moses had murdered a man. Do you remember that? He murdered a man. Buried him in Egyptian. He buried this Egyptian in the sand. And then he was a fugitive on the run. And then when God came to him and said, listen, in the burning bush, remember, I'm going to send you to go rescue the people from Egypt. Moses said, but I can't talk. You got to send someone else. He didn't want to go. He was pumping the brakes like, no. And he was trying to back out of what God was calling him to do. Moses was no perfect man. He was not like some guy that was up on a pedestal that, had earned his spot with God. He had become humble. He had become faithful. He had learned those things through years of living in the wilderness, in the desert. Remember that 40 years? Guys out there with a flock of goats or a flock of sheep out there just wandering around, keeping watch over them. He had learned these things. He had learned how to be humble and how to be faithful through God rebuking him and correcting him. He had learned that. It wasn't that Moses had earned it, but that he had learned it. And God was his teacher, and God was the one that was discipling him and changing this man to make him what he was. And it was God that chose to have this kind of relationship with Moses. I speak with him face to face, he says in verse 8, and even plainly, and not in dark sayings. There's no mystery. I just tell him plainly. And he sees the form of the Lord. And then he asks this question. He's like, Miriam, you want to ask questions? I've got some questions for you. Why then were you not afraid to speak against Moses or against my servant Moses? You see, God is taking this personal. He's saying, this is my servant. It's my servant. Why in the world would you speak against him? Now, I want you to note something. God does not necessarily, he addresses the fact that Moses is his spokesperson. He addresses that. What God does not spend any time on is Moses' wife. Evidently, that was not an issue for God. Evidently, God didn't have any complaints against Moses' choice of a wife. What he had a problem with was, this is my servant. You're questioning my servant. Now, it may be that God is indicating for us that the real issue was not the wife. Maybe that wasn't really the deal. Maybe God knew, and certainly God knew their hearts, Miriam's and Aaron's, but maybe he knew that the wife is not even really an issue. It's just something they picked on. And maybe the real issue was just that they were questioning his authority or his leadership. And so God zeroes in on that. But either way, the relationship that Moses has with his wife doesn't seem to be an issue for God. But he asks the question, you want to ask some questions? I asked you a question. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Didn't you recognize Miriam? Didn't you understand that this guy was different? Didn't you understand that? He's different. He's mine. He's my servant. I set him apart. You should have never attacked him, God is saying here. And so what happens here at this point in this defending, first of all, God speaks for Moses, speaks on his behalf. But the second thing that God does is he shuts out Miriam. Verse 9. So the anger of the Lord was aroused against them. Against them. And he departed. He left. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. Then Aaron turned toward Miriam, and there she was, a leper. Now, in the event that you have not been here for this series, our study, going through all of this, we had a long section in Leviticus about leprosy and the different types of leprosy. And leprosy wasn't just one thing. You know, we think of leprosy as being the flesh-eating disease. And it certainly was that. But there were actually, we found out that houses could actually get leprosy. And, other items could get leprosy. And you go, really? What is that all about? That, a house doesn't have flesh. No, but leprosy, that word was used for mold and all sorts of different things. But in this case, it's clear that this is the flesh-eating disease. The skin turned completely white. In other words, the skin was beginning to rot. So as God is departing, he strikes Miriam with leprosy. He immediately, again, he had suddenly called them. This short conversation, he's like, you want to speak one-on-one with me? Okay, then let's speak. And he speaks to Miriam and Aaron, and then he strikes Miriam with leprosy, this flesh-eating disease. Now again, we might ask ourselves, well, why just Miriam? Why not Aaron? Well, evidently because Miriam was the one leading the coup. She's the one that's, leading this attack. And, sometimes you'll have that one leader, and then other people are kind of, strung along because, maybe out of fear or whatever, but, they're not really 100% in it. Whatever, God knew. God knew what he was doing. And he strikes Miriam with leprosy. And Aaron turns in verse 10 toward Miriam, and then he sees that she's a leper. Not a leopard. Didn't have spots, but a leprosy. So Aaron said to Moses, notice how the tone changes, verse 11. So Aaron said to Moses, "Oh my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us." You see, I think that there was some selfishness going on there, some concern for self-preservation happening in the heart of Aaron, because I want you to notice his words. Now, it seems commendable that Aaron he's looking over at Miriam and then he looks at Moses, and he says, "Oh my Lord." He calls Moses, "Oh my Lord." It's lowercase L. And he says, "Oh my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us." Now, did you hear what he just said? He's not struck with leprosy yet. And he's trying to prevent that. And so he says to Moses, "Oh my Lord," it's good, starts with that great title, pays his respects. "Oh my Lord, do not lay this sin on us," he says. At this point, the sin is laid on Miriam. But there's fear in the heart of Aaron. And so he says, wait, have mercy, have mercy, have mercy. Don't strike me with leprosy. So he's interceding for Miriam. Please, take this away. But it seems to us that in the process, he's really, really concerned about himself. Please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly and in which we have sinned. Now that's commendable on Aaron's part. That when you're caught, just say it. That's me. I did it. Sorry. That's the best way to handle it. When you fight and no, I didn't do it, and you go on the defense. Listen, just you get caught. Just that's me. I'm guilty. I did it. This is the best way to do it. It causes the problem in a situation to be over much faster. And Aaron does that here. We've done foolishly and we sinned, he says. And in verse 12, he says, please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb. Please don't let her be a zombie, this walking dead. Please don't let Miriam die from this leprosy. He's asking for mercy from Moses. Now, it wasn't Moses that gave her the leprosy. Moses didn't have that kind of power, not apart from God. It wasn't just his own choosing to, I'm just going to strike you with leprosy. It wasn't Moses that did that. Why doesn't Aaron ask God? Because God split, man. God's like, I'm out of here. Here's some leprosy. Have fun. Boom, he's gone. And so now Aaron's going, wait a minute, where's everybody going? And Moses, you got to have mercy on us. And so in verse 13, this is incredible. So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, please heal her, O God, I pray. Really? I mean, imagine that. Imagine someone attacks you. Look at him or look at her. Some of you may be leaders or captains of some kind of team. Again, maybe it's the debate team, or maybe you're the, maybe you're the teacher's helper, the teacher's assistant, whatever. And, people, why do they get to do it? And look at her, look at him, and, look how he dresses, or, this guy, he doesn't even this and he doesn't even that, or she doesn't do this. And our tendency, again, is to defend ourselves and go on the attack and, want to make ourselves look good. Moses is attacked. And his response to Aaron is, he says to the Lord, he cries out to the Lord. In other words, he's praying on behalf of Miriam. Please heal her, O God, I pray. Now, I want to say something real quickly. Did you see his prayer? Did you see how long that was? Look at this. Here's his prayer. Please heal her, O God, I pray. That's it. Some of us are so afraid to pray, man, because I can't pray out loud because I don't have enough words. I don't really know what to say. I love this prayer. Please heal her, O God, I pray. Like, get to the point, Moses. Please heal her, O God, I pray. That's it. Nothing else. Doesn't add in any thous and thines and special language, and he doesn't call the heavens down and God in all of your glory and go through all of that. This is an emergency situation. Please heal her, O God, I pray. That's it. Get it done. Get to the point. In verse 14, then the Lord said to Moses, if her father, this is sounds kind of strange at first, but you'll understand. If her father had but spit in her face, would she not be shamed 7 days? If her own dad had spit in her face, then she would be shamed 7 days. Let her be, there it is, shut out of the camp 7 days. And afterward, she may be received again. So now she is ostracized. She's excluded from the camp. I mean, it seems to us, we do not know exactly how long this whole episode was, but it would seem to us that from the time that they were complaining, it says that God suddenly called them. There's this really short conversation, and then God splits and strikes her with leprosy. And then Aaron, it turns to Moses, please have mercy. Please don't judge us this way. And then God immediately says, look, for 7 days, kick her out, she's got leprosy. I mean, it seems to have happened very quickly. And so Miriam goes, in a moment it seems, from a place of prominence, this prominent position, to this shame-filled position outside of the camp. That was what she received for her attack on God's servant. Wow. And in verse 15, so Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. And afterward the people moved from Hazroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. So they had to wait. They had to wait because of Miriam's sin. They had to wait. Wait till she's done. Wait till she's done with this leprosy, and then we can take off once again. What a wonderful picture this is. Moses oftentimes becomes this picture of Jesus for us. Not everything about Moses, obviously, because he had lots of, there were character flaws that he had, and so he's not the perfect picture of Jesus, but he does at times become this picture of Jesus for us, and this is one of those times. Remember, we were told in the New Testament that when Jesus was being beat, when he was being questioned, he answered very, very little. There was only, 1 or 2 times where he said something during his mock trial and all of that. We're told that he was like a sheep before the shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. Jesus was being attacked, his character, and physically attacked, but like a sheep before the shearers. I don't know, have any of you ever seen a sheep being sheared? It is the funniest thing ever. I mean, there are different ways to do it, but most of the time you try to get that sheep on its hind parts. In other words, you try to sit it on its butt. And you get that thing up, and so it's just sitting there. And before, as you're trying to corral it and get it into the position that you need it, they're bleeding. The bleeding is the bah, bah, and they're just going crazy. And then once the shearer finally gets it, catches it, sits it up on its butt, the thing's completely helpless. It all of a sudden just becomes silent. It just sits there. And it looks so funny. Its legs just sticking out. It's almost like, okay, you got me, hurry up. And then the shearer just goes to work, and now they have the electric shears, and cuts that thing all up in just a matter of minutes. But even people that use the old shears, they're so fast, and they get the wool off of there. But the sheep just sits there, and that's a picture of Jesus who just sat there. He wasn't dumb, he wasn't silly, any of those things, but he was just like a sheep, just sitting there, like, okay, whatever you're going to do, just go ahead and do it. Those that captured him and attacked him and treated him brutally. And what a picture this is, because did you notice that did you notice this? That the only time that Moses spoke in this chapter was to pray for Miriam. Really? I mean, imagine you were attacked. Would you have something to say about it? You know you would. I know I would. Not so for Moses, not so for Jesus. That's the pattern. Look at this in Psalm 59:9. I will wait for you, O you, my strength, for God is my defense. I won't go on the attack for myself. I'll just wait for you, God. God, you're my defense. I'll let you do my fighting for me. That was the attitude of Moses. That was the attitude of Jesus. Here's another one, Matthew 5:44. This is, you know this one well. But I say to you, love your enemies. Forget about it, right? We're done already. Like, what? I think that's a mistranslation. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. I mean, have you ever stopped to take a serious look at this and to seriously consider it? Or have you been like so many where you read it and it's like, yeah, I don't really like that verse. Let's keep moving. Where's verse 45? Let's keep moving. Look at this. This is Jesus. Love your enemies. Did Jesus do that? Did Jesus do that? Remember Peter on the night that Jesus was arrested? Peter came swinging for that guy's head, and he cut off his ear, and Jesus reattached his ear, man, miraculously healed him. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Did Jesus do that? He did. Be good to those who hate you. Did Jesus do that? He did. Pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Did Jesus do that? He did. And did Moses do that? We just saw that here. The only time that Moses spoke up was to pray for Miriam, who had just finished attacking him. What an example. And it's a far cry from many of us, myself included. But this is what God desires. This is what God desires. That you and I would wait for God. He's my defense. I don't need to go out, machine gunning everybody that, with my verbal assaults, everybody that attacks me, I'm just going to get them back and I'm going to put it on social media so that everybody knows about it. I don't need to do that. Lord, you defend me. You take care of it. I love the book of Nehemiah for this fact. This is one of the many things that I like about Nehemiah, in that he oftentimes was Sanballat and Tobiah and Gashmu. What a name. They were trying to distract Nehemiah and distract the people and attack attack Nehemiah and the work. And Nehemiah never paid it any attention. He just would say, you know what, God, you take care of it. I'm busy working. And they said, let's come and meet. I don't have time to meet with you. I'm working. And then he would just pray and commit it to the Lord. That needs to be our response. This is not our home. We do not operate the same way that everybody else does. Our home is in heaven. Our home is the kingdom of God. We do not belong to this kingdom. And so we need to not operate like them. We need to operate like God does, like Moses did, like Jesus did. That's what God would have of us. But man, it's a tall order. What a tall order. To love our enemies. To bless those that curse us. To do good to those that hate us. To pray for those who spitefully use us and persecute us. What a tall order. Father, we are asking for your help.